J-Tech Studios in Atlanta, Georgia. It's America's favorite game show podcast. Tell them what they've won. And now, here are your hosts, Tom Bastek and Mike Jacobs.
Hello all, welcome in. Happy New Year. You're listening to America's favorite game show podcast. Tell them what they want. It's the game show, guys. I'm Tom Bastek.
I'm Mike Jacobs. A happy New Year to you, Tom. How was your New Year's Eve this year?
Very uneventful and very happy. We almost didn't make it. We slept up almost until the buzzer, then woke up, literally kissed at New Year's, and then went right back to bed. That's not true. We played a little Jack TV and then went back to bed.
There you go. Yeah, my wife did not make it to midnight, and I did, but it wasn't really worth it. The ball drop was kind of meh, and I don't know. COVID New Year's, what are you going to do? You know?
First of all, I hate all, and I'm very, very willing to admit this, I hate all of those stupid countdown shows. I think they're ridiculous.
That was terrible.
We watch it literally just to have the countdown, and I don't know, but the people across the street started shooting guns off and fireworks before the countdown ever got to the bottom. So I think there's a television delay possibly, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, well, I watched it on ABC on Hulu, and it was like a good minute and a half late. So, there you go. By the time it said Happy New Year on TV that I was watching, it was like 12:01 and change. So
Leave it to 2020 to ring in the New Year late. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, just stumbling across the finish line.
I love that everybody thinks it's going to be different in 2020.
Right? I mean, it's January 2nd. What new thing has happened?
This
Nothing.
Reminds me of all the people that are like, it's my last day in my 20s. I don't know what I'm going to do tomorrow. I'm like, you're going to live.
Yep, you're going to be 30.
Fine. Yeah, wow. Congratulations.
So total left field turn, but I do want to bring this up just as a thing for people to go check out. Maybe we can post this on the page for this week's episode. Crystal and I found a game show on YouTube. It apparently used to be on Spike TV. It is called Repo Games. And
the Repo Games.
Yes.
Okay.
I highly recommend checking it out. It is bonkers. Out of this world weird. So the concept is that it's a team of repo men, one of which has been chosen to host this show. I don't know how real any of this is, by the way.
All right.
They are going to someone's house who has not paid on their car and are going to repossess their car. That's the show, right? As they repossess the car, the quote-unquote host hops out and says, if you answer 3 out of 5 questions right, we will pay off your car right now and you can have it back. Otherwise, we're repossessing your car.
Wow.
I mean, I'm telling you, it's great. And the people they have on this show, I mean, there are some real winners. The second episode I'm watching, as they pull up to repossess the car, 2 dudes hop out. They're smoking weed in the car as they're getting repossessed.
Oh my God.
I mean, it's off the wall. And mean, I don't know how real any of it is, but watch it because it's just hilarious. The mere concept of it is, it's really something.
All right, cool. Well, I'll definitely put the link up to it on the website. That's great.
Awesome.
All right, without any further ado, let's get into the news with Senor Christian.
Light up your cigarette, crack open a beer, put the kiddos to bed. From chaos around the world to carnage in your very own front yard, it's time for the news.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Tom. This is the news brought to you by BuzzerBlog.com. This week marks the final 5 episodes of Alex Trebek's historic run as host of Jeopardy! Started back in September of 1984 and has become more associated with Jeopardy! Than I would say any other host has become associated with their show. He was an American institution, a Canadian institution. He, of course, sadly passed away from cancer last November, and we are all still feeling the effects of that and thinking about who could possibly replace Alex Trebek. Ken Jennings is going to have his shot starting Monday, the 11th, as a temporary substitute host, first in what the producers say is going to be a line of guest hosts before they announce a permanent replacement. interesting times, but have a box of Kleenex handy for the episodes this week.
For sure. Do you know what the final tally of episodes hosted will be for him?
It has to be up in at least like the 7,000 or 8,000s.
Yeah.
It's way up there. To host a show 5 days a week for over 30 years.
Yeah, since '84. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I guess we could just do the math, but yeah.
Gosh, why didn't we do that for Stump the Chump? We would have had him, Mike.
Does that mean I just inadvertently stumped the chump?
I don't know. It's not official. He didn't have his thinking cap on. It
That's
was
true.
literally
That's
off the
true.
top of his
That's true.
head. I mean,
That's true.
I can't count that. I just
Well,
can't.
the thing is, it's not within this segment, so it doesn't matter one way or the other.
I don't have to know a damn thing until you put that Stump to Chump music up. I really quick search for it. So it is over 8,000 episodes. I don't have an exact number, but it is
Man.
over 8,000.
Wow.
So I'll just read this quick because I think it's incredible. The daily syndicated version of Jeopardy has won a record 39 Daytime Emmy Awards as well as a Peabody Award. Number 45 on the TV Guide list of the 60 greatest game shows in American TV history. 60 greatest shows in American TV history. Yeah, just record-breaking all across the board, and it's going to be very surreal to see that era of Alex Trebek and Jeopardy end, but let's see what happens.
I think it's going to be great, and I think that our boy LeVar Burton's getting a job.
Oh, I hope so. If he's not at least a substitute host, I would be so excited to see him at least get a shot at hosting it. I feel like that would be a game show-related dream of mine realized.
I am just excited to find out who else they bring in. I hope they bring in some really lousy people, too.
It's going to be weird to see somebody bad at hosting Jeopardy. I don't think we've had that. I don't think we've ever had that.
Let's get William Hung in there. That'll be a good one.
There you go.
Or John Cena.
Or John Davidson.
Oh. We're not talking about John Davidson on this podcast until he gives us an interview.
Damn right.
That's enough about him. All right, Christian, what else you got for us?
Well, in a little bit of lighter news, we are making history this week. So for the first time, and I want to say about 10 or 15 years, probably going back to when we had a lot of the big money shows in prime time with Millionaire and Greed and all those things that were on at the same time. This week, for the first time in a long time, we have 20 hours of original game show programming in network primetime, which for this genre is just such an incredible milestone. I mean, you think about where game shows were 10 years ago, let alone 5 years ago. And, I think that there are a lot of things at play. I think people are home during the pandemic and they're looking for comfort food. They're looking for entertaining, light, fun things to watch, and game shows fit that bill completely. You also have the fact that ABC has given so much respect to game shows in, as a whole, with the all the revivals that they've had of Match Game, of Press Your Luck, Pyramid, everything that they have on. So it's just a really booming year for game shows, and I think 2021 is going to have a lot of stuff in store, as evidenced by this week. So on January 4th, we have Get a Clue on Game Show Network starting its second season. We have Ellen's Game of Games, if you're into Ellen for whatever god-awful reason. That starts on the 4th as well as The Wall, also on NBC. Name That Tune, the new Name That Tune with Jane, oh my God, I always get Jane Krasinski and Jane Krakowski confused. Jane Krakowski, right?
Yes, correct.
Right,
correct.
and Randy Jackson. Right, that starts on Fox on January 6th, as well as The Price is Right at night. We get another Price is Right primetime celebrity special. Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? 3 hours on January 6th of Millionaire, as well as Celebrity Wheel of Fortune. That starts the following day on ABC on January 7th. The Chase. So I was a contestant on The Chase years ago when it was on GSN, but we're getting a new version featuring the 3 greatest Jeopardy players of all time, Ken, Brad, and James. Starts on the 7th, and The Hustler, hosted by Craig Ferguson, a new original series on ABC, and that starts on January 7th. So you've set your DVR. You have a lot of stuff to watch this week.
Yeah, I want to try and watch a lot of that. I think it's so exciting that we have this much new content, and I think you're absolutely right that the pandemic is playing a big role in that, not only because of, what audience we're looking for, but I also think it's because game shows are, the way that they're produced sort of lend themselves to this sort of situation, in that, you can have 3 contestants and a host, maybe a small crew, keep everybody separated. You don't necessarily need an audience. You can make these game shows fairly safe, as far as the social distancing is concerned.
Yeah, I agree with that too. I think that they're just easy to produce right now. And I think that with, again, the respect that ABC gives it makes everybody else want to jump on board. That's a huge thing.
And, at the end of the day, it's all about money. And game shows, in comparison with scripted series, are so much cheaper to produce.
Right.
So, it's win-win all around.
Absolutely. All right, Christian, what about this week in game show history?
Well, we have 9 shows this week, and I'll talk about them one at a time.
Wait a second. No, we already did that. That was what was going on in the news. We had 9 shows this week.
Oh, I know. Believe me. We had 9 new shows premiering this week. But This week in game show history, I'm going to take a second and talk about 9 game shows that have premiered this week in game show history. And,
wow.
And
does that mean that this year alone, we have tied the number of shows released in this week up until this point in history?
Just about. Some of the shows this week are new episodes of returning series, but
okay, I'll take it.
We have a lot of original programming in primetime, and there was a lot of original programming in terms of game shows, especially throughout the 60s, 70s, and 80s when the genre was really booming. So I'm going to talk about these one at a time. First of all,
sure.
January 6, 1975, Wheel of Fortune. Wheel of Fortune, hosted by Chuck Woolery and Susan Stafford, premiered on January 6, 1975. Now, I'll say really quick, the way Wheel of Fortune hit the air, there was a new president of daytime programming at NBC, and she decided that a lot of the game shows that were on looked very old and stodgy compared to things like The Price is Right on CBS. So she canceled Jeopardy before its contract was up. And Merv Griffin said, well, you can cancel Jeopardy, but let me put on in its place this new show I've been working on. I've been dealing a lot with Hangman and things like that. So this show is called Wheel of Fortune. Let's give that a try. And at her request, there was a shopping element. Contestants used to buy their prizes with the money that they won after each round. That was to attract housewives during the day, and that element stayed on for 15 years after that, and now, of course, they all play for big money and cars and trips and all that. But, Wheel of Fortune, 1975. Also, on January 6th, a show called The Diamond Head Game. I don't know if either of you have heard of that, hosted by Bob Eubanks. And if you haven't...
No, not me, no.
It is terrible. So the premise of The Diamond Head Game is, let's do a game show in Hawaii. And that's as far as they thought it out. So you had a big audience. Everybody was on set. The set kind of represented the different islands of Hawaii. 2 contestants would be picked to play like a little word game. And eventually the one remaining player at the end would get into, the big booth with money blowing around?
Uh-huh.
They had one of those with a big paper mache volcano around it. And so they would reach and grab money, and then they put it in their little fanny pack. Then they come out and they go one at a time and pick the bills out. And if you got a $1 bill, you lost all your money, and you had a chance to stop after each one. Terrible show. Everybody related to the show hated it. Bob Eubanks told the story once about how he saw a man get killed in his hotel on the way home from a taping, and the staff and the crew were told not to leave the resort because the crime in Hawaii was through the roof.
Oh my
Nice.
God.
So the Diamond Head Game. Then another classic back in 1962, the primetime version of Password. So the one-word clue game hosted by Alan London premiered in 1962. Jackpot premiered in January of 1974, and that is a show where one person competed against 15 others to solve riddles, and there was a big $50,000 jackpot hosted by Jeff Edwards, who went on to host Treasure Hunt and a few other things. Really cool show, lasted about a year and a half, and then there was a syndicated version in the 80s. Sale of the Century, January 1983, also premiered the same day as Plinko on The Price is Right. January is a big month for game show history. Yeah, so this is the 80s version hosted by Jim Perry. A year prior, the Australian version was a huge hit, and then, of course, that came to America. If you ever look at 2 episodes side by side, the American and Australian, they look exactly the same. They are carbon copies of each other, and that show...
Well, except for the Australian version is upside down.
That's right. Yeah, it turns counterclockwise, right?
Okay. All right. Yeah. All right.
Well, we'll just flush that and move on to the next one. The $1 million chance of a lifetime in the 80s, hosted by Jim Lang of The Dating Game. This was the first show to advertise a $1 million prize, and it was essentially a ripoff of Wheel of Fortune. They had a giant computer on set, and contestants would go up and press the buttons on the keyboard. That's how they would guess letters to the puzzle, and the $1 million was paid several times, and that was as an annuity. I think it was $25,000 a year for 40 years. So chance of a lifetime. There's another one. I Guess, hosted by Bill Cullen, the first independent production of Bob Stewart, who used to work for Mark Goodson and Bill Todman, helped create Password, helped create The Price is Right, helped create To Tell the Truth, struck out on his own and created this memory game hosted by Bill Cullen. Really unbelievably fun show. I think there's only an episode or two around on YouTube, but highly recommended watching. Number Please. So Number Please is a more obscure one. That was hosted by Bud Collier of Beat the Clock. And the way Number Please worked was you had two contestants. Each one had a hangman type puzzle in front of them. And the puzzle was always the name of the prize they were going to win. So the contestants would go back and forth picking letters until one of them hit their buzzer, meaning that they could solve their puzzle in front of them. And again, the puzzle was always the name of the prize that they'd win if they'd solve it. So if they solved their own, then they had the chance to solve their opponents. As boring as that sounds, that lasted for several years. And it was a pretty popular show. That was on, I believe that was ABC.
I don't know that sounds necessarily boring, but it sounds like it would be done in like 2 minutes.
Well, I'll tell you how they filled the time. First of all, they played several games in each episode. Second of all, the host would interview the contestants about their life. And so those interviews would fill up a lot of the time, maybe because the producers realized how little game there was in this game. And this was one of the first shows where, game shows back in the day always had an organ player playing the music, and, it was kind of cheesy soap opera kind of music. This was the first time where the organ player played throughout the show. So as the host was talking during the interviews, there was a constant sort of musical score. And that was one of the first shows to experiment with music in that way. So yeah, Number Please. And then finally, GE College Bowl, which we're getting a new version of this year, hosted by Peyton Manning. The original version hosted by Alan Ludden, soon to be famous for Password, premiered in January, this week, in game show history.
Wow, that's a lot. Catch your breath.
Yeah, you're going to need it because it's almost time for us to stump the chump.
Oh, man. All right. So we got some good ones this week. You got a doubleheader for a question. Now, they were presented as question 1 and question 2, and the submitter, Brian from Connecticut, has deemed question 1 to be the difficult one and question 2 to be the even harder one. Now, personally, I think they're the other way around, but that just may be because I ran across this little factoid when, not factoid, it's a fact, but I ran across this fact when researching this show. Both questions are going to be about the pyramid.
Okay, cool.
So I'm going to start with the second, and we'll work backwards from there.
Okay.
All right. So this is the one that I think is not as hard, but that's only because I knew it.
Okay.
What celebrity was temporarily banned from Pyramid after throwing a chair from the winner's circle?
Oh, I know this one, and I know this for several reasons. Back in the day, when I was a young game show fan, this was one of the clips that was on one of my favorite websites back in the day, and I used to love watching it because I found it really, really funny. Years later, I think it was William Shatner was on The Tonight Show, and they unearthed this clip, actually contacted a friend of mine who collects VHS tapes. He sent it into The Tonight Show, and they played it. So William Shatner got frustrated because on the last clue of the winner circle, I think it was, the category was like things you bless or things that are blessed, and he accidentally said the blessed something, and they buzzed him, and he got mad and yelled and picked up his chair and threw it across the set and completely broke it. But yeah, I think that was William Shatner.
That is correct. He gave an illegal clue. You are more detailed than the question is, but yes, that is absolutely correct.
Of course I'm more detailed than the question is!
Why did I ever think otherwise? All right, so
we are never stumping him. You realize that?
So this is why these questions are tying together, because this also has to do with a celebrity on the pyramid. But do you know what celebrity holds the record for
Billy Crystal, 26 seconds.
Okay.
Oh my, come on. Really? Was that it?
I mean,
Brian from Connecticut, come on.
Wait, but hang on. The real takeaway here is that he was right. The question 2 was more difficult. I just happened to know the more difficult question.
Well, Christian got it right. Again, if you'd like to stump the chump, please, or submit a question to possibly stump the chump, please submit via social and or send through the website, and make them hard. Please, somebody make them hard.
I'm getting tired of this cocky attitude.
Yeah, I know, and he's getting cockier each week.
He is. He is.
I'm smoking a cigar right now. You can't see it.
Oh, please. All right, Christian, this week we are doing High Rollers as our featured game show. Your thoughts, please.
High Rollers is such a cool show. So keeping in the tradition of the Merrill Hayter and Bob Quigley production team's habit of taking a small game and making it really, really big. They did it with Hollywood Squares. They did it with the Magnificent Marble Machine, which we discussed a few weeks ago. High Rollers takes the old Sailors game of Shut the Box and makes it a big, huge Vegas-style production. And Alex Trebek, of course, incredible host on there. I love High Rollers. I think it's such a great game. Lucille Ball also was a huge fan of High Rollers. She used to visit the set once in a while and just kind of say hi to everyone and hang out with Alex Trebek for a few minutes. But she was quoted in an interview during the 70s as saying Alex Trebek and High Rollers were like her favorite host and show combination at that particular time. And then years later, Wink Martindale did a great job with the show as well.
Yeah, I remember the Wink Martindale version. I did not. I was too young to remember the Alex Trebek, but both are available on YouTube. Check them out. It's amazing.
Absolutely. If you ever get to see the final episode of Alex Trebek's High Rollers, he pretends to be drunk throughout the entire episode, which early in his career was something he was sort of infamous for doing. He just once in a while would go out there and host it like he was an alcoholic.
All right, how about a plug for Buzzer Blog before we get out of here?
Of course, BuzzerBlog.com, the #1 game show website in the world. Whether you're looking for information on any of the beautiful new series we have premiering this year, anything coming up, anything old, anything new, reviews, casting notices, whether you're an industry insider or a diehard game show fan, BuzzerBlog.com is the place to go. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Christian. We appreciate it. We'll see you again next week.
I appreciate you guys. Thank you.
If you want to be the next person to attempt to stump the chump, submit your questions via social or the website, however you'd like to do it. And we got a couple in the hopper, but we're looking for some good ones. We're gonna rank them via hardest now at this point, I think.
Well, we need, I'm gonna start trying to rank them, but it's really tough as this week's shows, like how to really rank them. And so I think if people send in multiple questions, let us know if you want it to be like multiple questions in one, or if you want us to split them up into separate questions for them. This week I combined them, but let us know how you want to present them to Christian, if there's any special ways.
Cool. Yeah. All right. Great. All right, Mike, we are at episode number 30 this week. It is High Rollers, and we have gameplay coming up.
We do have gameplay coming up. It's basically just a game that already exists, but that's fine. Let's talk about it.
There's a lot of game shows though. They're based on games that
you're absolutely right. That is a huge, and I love Scrabble, and I get it, but for some reason, if this show just didn't do it for me. That's probably not the reason, but it's a reason.
I'm basically going to take away every reason that you give that you didn't like this show and say, well, then you shouldn't like the other shows based on the fact that what you just said.
Well, I mean, look, I never said there was logic to the way I'd compare these things.
No, and by the way, that goes neither for me either. So.
A lot of times it's just a gut reaction,
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, we're taking a break. We'll be back right after this. You've been listening to America's favorite game show podcast. Tell them what they've won. All right, there it is, the theme song from High Rollers. That's the original one with good old Mr. Alex Trebek. And, I was reading a lot about him, obviously, as we were doing research for this, and it bummed me out.
Yeah, he... what can be said? Like saying that we've lost a legend feels like it's not doing justice to the,
so
the gravity of the situation. But I will say, watching the older episodes of this with the afro that he had, that brought me a lot of joy.
It's very funny because he looks a lot like Christian. If Christian, when Christian had hair and it was big and it was poofy, he looks a lot like that if Christian just had a porn stash.
Interesting. I've not seen them side by side or noticed it, but I'd be interested to check that out.
All right. So anyway, we've got gameplay for high rollers. Take it away, Michael.
Indeed. The gameplay here is basically, if you are familiar with the board dice game called Shut the Box, that's basically the core of this game. Add in a trivia element, of course, and mix it up a little bit for game show, but it's essentially a competition between two contestants, and they're presented with this large board with the numbers 1 through 9 up on the board. So by the way, as with many of the shows that we're talking about, there are many, many changes as we go on to the rules and specifics and whatnot. So again, I'm just going to talk sort of in generalities. At the end of it, I have some maybe significant rule changes that happened over the time or over the years. But for now, we'll just talk in generalities. But yeah, so they're giving us board with 1 through 9 on it. And the idea is they need to eliminate those numbers by rolling dice. Typically, there's prizes under them. Initially, there was a prize under each number. Later, it was a prize under groups of 3. But so what happens is the host, Alex Trebek, will ask a toss-up trivia question, and the contestants buzz in to answer. The first one who buzzes in, obviously, gets the chance to answer, and if they're right, they get control of the dice. If they get it wrong, they give control to their opponent. What control means is they can either take the roll themselves or pass the dice to their opponent. Again, the idea being you're trying to eliminate the numbers on the board based on the roll of the dice. So, for example, if you roll a 3 and a 4, you can choose to eliminate 7, right? So you can either get rid of the 7 itself, you can get rid of the 4 and the 3, you can get rid of the 5 and the 2. However it is you add up to 7, that's what you get rid of on the board. And of course, you bank any prizes earned through eliminating those spaces. There's 2 important caveats here, though. First, you cannot choose to use only one of your die. So in that previous example, you rolled a 3 and a 4. You can't just say, oh, knock out the 3 and ignore the 4. You have to use 7 in some way. And the other rule being you cannot choose a number which has already been eliminated. So again, in that previous example, if the 3 and the 4 had already, or let's just say the 3 had been eliminated, you can't choose 3 and 4 because the 3 is already gone. So what this means ultimately is that as the game proceeds, the likelihood of what they call a bad roll, which is a roll where no numbers can be eliminated, that likelihood increases. And that's sort of where the strategy of passing when you have control comes in. If there's very few numbers left and it's unlikely that they will be rolled, pass to your opponent and they'll likely get a bad roll, and that means that they're out of the game. Another important strategical thing to keep in mind with this game, I think most people know this, but when rolling a pair of dice, 7 is the most likely number that you're going to get. So, I mean, this is a wild example, but if for some reason 7 is the only number left, maybe it's worth going for because, 7 is a very likely number to get. Whereas if you have only 3 left, like you can only get that by rolling a 1 and a 2, right? So it's not very likely that it's going to happen. That's when you would probably pass. So as I mentioned, you're banking prizes based on whatever numbers you're knocking out, but you don't actually get those prizes. You're just banking them. You only get them if you are the winner of that round. That's been a thing we've brought up in several games before, where you can theoretically get prizes, but you may not actually win them until the end of the game. And so that's basically one round, right? Once someone gets a bad roll or someone knocks out the last number, that ends the round. You play until someone gets 2 wins. So theoretically best of 2. Not theoretically. Let me retake that. You play until one of them gets 2 wins, and then that contestant moves on to the big numbers bonus round. And the bonus round is basically just a solitaire game of Shut the Box. You try to eliminate all the numbers 1 through 9, and you get money for each individual number that you knock out, and then a big bonus prize if you get all 9 of them. Also, during the course of the game, doubles will get you what's called an insurance marker. And that is basically just, it allows you to keep playing if you got a bad roll. It wouldn't knock you out of the game. It would just say, all right, we can keep going. That also is true in the bonus round. So you could theoretically get some bad rolls in the bonus round and not be out right away.
I feel like there's a lot of strategy here, Mike, like more so than just, hey, let's roll the dice. I feel like this to me is a lot of fun because you can take multiple numbers off the board. And back in the old school one where you could take like up to 3, you could have 3 prizes on your board. I watched an episode where the one lady won and she actually had no prizes.
Yeah, well, and in that case, you do get, there's a baseline amount of money that they give you if you don't bank anything. So it's not like you win and then get nothing. But yeah, that can definitely happen for sure.
And I do like the idea of at least when you get to that bonus round, you can win up to $10,000, you know, or whatever the top prize is, you know. But then you immediately go right back and you're playing again. So you can actually get to that bonus round, you know, many more times.
Right. They had a returning champion deal, and I forget the specifics of how it worked, but I believe it was if you got to 5 wins, you were retired and they gave you a car. But then eventually I think they got rid of the car in lieu of giving away more cars over the course of just the standard game.
I think it was 5 regardless if you won or lost. I think you were retired after 5 appearances in the final round. I think that's what it was. But if you did get 5 in a row, I think you got the car.
Right. No, yes. Oh, I see what you're saying. You're retired after 5. If you retire with 5 wins, you get a car.
Right.
Got it.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Cool.
That's at least the way I read it.
Gotcha.
I don't know.
I don't know
I could
either.
be incorrect.
Yeah. We'll find out sometime over the course of the next week.
I'm sure someone will let us know.
Yep. So like I said, there are some interesting twists to the rules here and there to try and spice it up a little bit, which honestly I agree with. If you watch the original version, the only thing I prefer about the original version, and we'll talk more about this, is that there's prizes for each number as opposed to the triads of numbers. But I do think that they needed to give some more flair to the game to translate better to TV. One of the things that I really liked in the later versions of the Trebek show, the numbers 1 through 9 would be arranged in a 3x3 grid, and it would cover up the picture of a celebrity. So as you knocked out the numbers, you'd reveal the picture of this celebrity, and you had to guess who it was, which is a little bit like Concentration, another Alex Trebek show.
Right.
And a little bit like there was a show called Get the Picture on Nickelodeon in the 90s, if anyone remembers that. Reminds me of a little bit of those.
I remember that. And I think, you know, I saw one episode and there was a guy that looked an awful lot like you in the audience.
Yeah, I'm sure you've actually seen that one. Yes, I am. They show me multiple times very, very close up in the audience of one of the episodes of that show. I was indeed in the audience. I have not found, I have seen it since I was a child. I recorded it back in the day. No clue what happened to that tape. And I know it existed online at one point because I found it like in college or something.
Right.
But yeah, you can find me in the credits of one episode of Get the Picture.
Yeah. The best thing to do would be to find out which episode it was that you were on, and then we can like track down the tape of it.
I mean, I've tried working it backwards several times and like figure out what year it was and all that stuff. What's funny is, so there was a kid that I met in line while we were waiting to get into the show, you know? And
Sure.
he was like from Orlando, and he said his parents took him there all the time and like all this kind of stuff. And I remember later on as a kid watching, there was a Mark Summers show called Get the Picture. I'm sorry, not Get the Picture. We're talking about Get the Picture. There was a Mark Summers show called What Would You Do? And he was on it like as a contestant. And I was like, oh, that's that kid. Like, good for him. He made it on a show. As I have gone back and watched through the credits of Get the Picture to try and find myself, this one kid is in like 90% of the shows. I think he was at Nickelodeon Studios like every weekend.
Wow.
He is always there.
And you know what the funny thing is? His name was Justin Timberlake.
Oh, God. Who knew? So I do want to say, if you are that kid or if you know who I'm talking about, let me know, because this is a fascinating thing to me.
There's a severe rabbit hole to send Christian down.
Send Christian down? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, here's the thing. I'd be willing to bet he belongs in the Guinness Book of World Record for most appearances in game show audiences.
He may. Although there's a lot of game show women of the night, as they used to say. Okay, so when I was in Vegas, I got talking to the producers of Let's Make a Deal, because they were filming at the Tropicana where I was, and they used to call them, and this is not my words, but game show hoes. Because these people would just travel from place to place to place to place, or show to show to show to show. and they'd be on all these shows over and over and over again. So what I'm saying is that I don't think that child that was on all those shows as a youngin would hold the record necessarily, because there's a lot of folks that are on a lot of shows.
Well, I'm not saying being on the show. I'm saying being in the audience of. But either way, I take your meaning. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying. And all these people that are on Let's Make a Deal are not all getting on the show. They're just in the audience.
When you brought up the term game show ho, I thought you were going a different direction with it. There is a phenomenon in the gaming community where at gaming conventions, women of the night will show up and hit on all these desperate nerds and try to, pick up a John for the evening, if you will.
So are they gaming hoes then?
I don't know if they have a specific term, but I know it's a thing.
Okay. All right. Well, sex workers are real jobs.
Hey, no, so I'm not faulting them. If anything, that's a brilliant move. Go to where a bunch of dudes are that are not having sex.
Absolutely, because that's your audience. We could go on with this for years and years. Anyway, getting back to the gameplay. Go ahead.
One thing that I thought was it's at least noteworthy was in the early versions there was hostesses who would roll the dice on behalf of the contestant, and then later they had the contestants roll the dice themselves. I why would you not have the contestants roll the dice themselves?
I got to tell you, I kind of like the first way better.
What? It's weird.
Why? Because that way you take away the idea that someone could cheat by rolling the dice a certain way or doing a certain thing. Now, I will say that at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter because it's like live on national television. You're watching the person roll. Nobody was trying to do it strangely or weirdly or differently. And I will say that when I did like the cool craps table that they used in the second version where the dice, the table was on like a conveyor belt and the dice would roll back automatically.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
That was totally cool.
That was really cool.
Totally cool. But I don't see there being a problem, especially, you're in the 70s. You're less than 20 years removed from all of the game show nastiness that went on. To try to take away the element of anybody could cheat, I could see why they would do that. Plus, you've got a pretty lady on there, and that I'm sure has some sort of sex appeal thing in the 70s that was very big.
Sure. Well, and that's what I had assumed was sort of the only rationale. I guess I sort of see the idea of you can't cheat. It's very hard to roll dice in a specific way, especially if they're like weighted properly and whatnot. But, I suppose there is that angle of, you don't want the contestant to know funny business. So, yeah, I'll take it. In the late 80s, that version saw basically mini games, if you want to call them that, where when a contestant eliminated a column, sometimes instead of prizes, it would have a little mini game that plays with one single die. And the idea being typically that there was 5 different prizes, 1 through 5. Like let's say it was you're getting a vacation, it's one of 5 vacation destinations. You're getting a fur coat, what kind of fur coat is it? That sort of deal. So you roll 1 through 5, and whichever one you get, that's the prize you get, with a 6, meaning you get all of them. I don't know how frequently that happened, and I have to imagine with the vacation destinations, you get 5 vacations with the roll of a die. That's wild. I didn't actually see any of those, but I just like the concept of that, fate deciding what prize you win.
This is probably a good place as any for us to talk about this, but I definitely feel like the prizes on these shows back in the 1970s and early 80s were amazing. I mean, even going back to the 60s were amazing. I mean, I watched a lady win a 16-day trip to South America on this show. It was like 7 different countries. It was ridiculous. That's a huge gift.
Well, and the thing is, I think the idea of winning cash has far supplanted, I don't know if that's the right terminology, but you know what I'm saying? Like it's more than just replaced the idea of winning prizes. It's like that's why you go on game shows now, to win a bunch of cash, right? Like nobody's going on game shows and being like, "Oh, I'm going to get a trip to Hawaii." The thought process has shifted, but I think the overall idea of like budget and top prize has not really changed other than inflation. So what would have been a $50,000 prize is now a $50,000 trip. So you are winning much more extravagant prizes. Also, the idea of them being subsidized by having the prizes supplied by a company for advertising purposes.
So my feeling is that I think the reason why things have gone mostly to cash is because people don't want to pay taxes on the items that they get.
Yeah, I guess it's easier to pay taxes on cash because then you just get less cash.
And there is probably less product placement nowadays, although you would think there would be more. I think that you've got like places like The Price is Right where you've got all product placement, where it's amazing. But still, I mean, I just love the idea of prizes. Heck, I will also say on this show, when I watched the Alex Trebek episode, they actually offered something called a welcoming gift, which was 2 nights at a hotel in Newport Beach, which now, granted, is probably where they're putting you up while you're there to film the show. But I've heard Christian tell me about all the shows he's been on, and he's had to fly himself out and put himself up no matter where they were filming.
Right. Yeah, the idea of the show footing the bill for their contestants getting out there, that is long gone for sure.
Yeah. Well, it was like when I got out of radio, they replaced me with a $6.50 part-time kid, and the reason was because everybody wants to be in radio. So they can afford to pay that low. And it's the same sort of thing with everybody wants to be on a game show, so they can afford to pay themselves to come out here and put themselves up.
Yep.
Anyway, so, okay, rest of gameplay. I apologize for tangenting us.
No, that's it. That was the end of gameplay.
All right. Well, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll talk about the history of the game, which actually this has got like three different incarnations, essentially?
Yeah, basically.
And we'll talk about that. Plus, we'll give our ratings. And I will convince Mike that all of his excuses for choosing this is not his favorite game show are non, and void.
Ill-informed. Well, look, I mean, I've never been shy about admitting that my opinions are wrong in the past. So if you can convince me, maybe that'll happen here. But it'll take some doing.
Tune in to find out. You've been listening to America's favorite game show podcast. Tell them what they've won. And welcome back. Episode number 30, segment number 3. Mike, we made it to 30.
We made it to 30. 2021,
Very exciting.
Made it to 30. Again, stumbling across the finish line, but we're there.
Yeah, I definitely think so. It's a good number to be out at the beginning of the year, and we are working towards our 1-year anniversary. Very excited. I wonder what we're going to have to do for that. We're going to have to come up with a big show idea or something.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure we got plenty of things in the hopper that we can pull
Absolutely.
out. Yeah.
Absolutely. You may finally get your video game show.
Let's do that. I'm pitching for it. You know.
Yeah, I know. I hear you. All right.
You don't seem too into it.
That being said, I'm down for all of that. I mean, you don't understand. Like, I vaguely remember those games, and then I looked up. What's the one that you're talking about?
Video Power.
I looked up Video Power, and I was like, oh, I do remember this game. I totally remember this game. Like, people had Velcro and were sticking things to themselves.
Yeah. Oh man, it's the jam. Anyways.
Yeah. So that's another story. Never mind anyway. All right. We are on to history of this week's featured show, which is High Rollers.
Indeed.
Which I enjoyed and Mike did not enjoy so much.
Yeah, I was going to say so much. I'm not going to say I didn't enjoy it, but it just wasn't.
No, that's fine.
Wasn't
yeah.
for me.
Ratings are coming, so stand by.
Indeed. All right, so created by, I don't know how to pronounce this, Hatter, Quigley.
Gosh. Yeah,
those are two complicated names. Hiatter and Quigley Productions. The show debuts on July 1st, 1974 on daytime NBC, hosted by Alex Trebek from the get-go. We had Kenny Williams as the announcer. I believe you were talking about the announcer earlier. Kenny Williams is his name. He was apparently the on-call studio announcer for the Hiatter Quigley Productions in general. For the first year of the show, the actress Rutta Lee was our hostess, the dice roller, as we mentioned earlier, but later replaced by Elaine Stewart. She was on for, I think, a longer amount of time and would really probably be more the known hostess. It continued to run. A year and 2 months later, they began a syndicated version, also hosted by Trebek. It took a year and 2 months, which I don't know if that's really a long time to start a syndicated version, but obviously it's doing well after the first year, well enough to necessitate a second version. Like I said, Trebek is hosting that one as well. But then they both ended in 76, which seems like kind of a short run to me. That's what, 2 years for the daytime version and then 1 year for the syndicated version. Like I said, I think that initial version didn't have enough spice to really make it a game show. It was, anyone who's played Get the Box, it's a really, really fun game. But it just didn't have enough, in my opinion, to translate to a game show for that first run. And then in 1978, April 24th to be exact, NBC brought it back again, and again with Alex Trebek hosting. And this one ran for another 2 years, canceled on June 20th of 1980. And this time around, it was actually specifically canceled because NBC was trying to make room for the David Letterman show at that time. They needed to do some, canceling, shuffling around, whatever, to get it into the lineup, which ultimately, I'm not going to fault them for that. That ended up being a huge show for them.
Actually, it didn't end up being a huge show. It ended up being a terrible daytime show and a huge night show.
Oh, this was the daytime version of the Letterman show.
Yes, that they were rotating around for.
Yes. I misread that. Then yes, I'm with you there. Gotcha.
So, go ahead.
Yeah, so like I said, overall, fairly short run, 4 years in total, right? No, I'm sorry, two-year runs, spanning, I guess, 6 years in total. But that timeline, they ended up making 559 episodes, which is, that's a lot of episodes. But the weird thing is that reruns did not continue. You'd think with that much, they could last on reruns for a while, but it was really just kind of those two short airings. In 87, this is when the sort of third edition of the show comes out. And it's actually still created by Merrill Hyatter. Quigley has since retired, but he went on to develop the now new version of the show. And interestingly, he worked with Orion Studios, which this was their television division. I have to imagine it's all the same, but their movie division famously went bankrupt in the 80s. They made RoboCop back in the day. They were a huge outfit in the 80s and then just absolutely tanked. There's a pretty interesting story actually there. There's a movie called Robot Jox, Jox, and that is considered to be the sort of death of Orion. Yeah. Anyways, but this was before all that, so they brought the show back. The new series began in September of 87, and this time we have Wink Martindale as the host, which, I mean, that seems like a pretty big powerhouse. You'd think that with a show that, I guess it's hard to say. It doesn't seem like it was successful overall, and this version lasted less than a year. May 27th, 88 is when it ended, and they stopped showing reruns before the end of the year even. So that they just pulled that one immediately. Overall, I don't think this show ever really got the footing that maybe it thinks it deserved. I don't know that it deserves it. I don't know. What do you think?
So I am a big fan of this show. I like it. I really like Wink Martindale. I really like Alex Trebek. Probably two of my favorite hosts. I'm a craps guy. I love playing craps. This is kind of like craps in its own way. I've played Shut the Box a couple of times and I dig it. And I don't think it's any different than taking any other board game or tic-tac-toe or whatever and turning it into a presentation, like a game show presentation. I I think that you're right that it didn't last very long for as much love as it gets, because it gets a lot of love.
It does. It's often brought up in like conversations of, classic, stands the test of time game shows.
I definitely remember the game, and as I said in the last segment, I really loved in the Wink Martindale version where they had the table like was on the felt table was on a conveyor belt that would keep rolling the dice back to the rollers, and I just thought that was the coolest thing. I still think it's the coolest thing. I watched an episode of it yesterday. I was like, oh, that's so cool. I remember that. So I remember watching this show as a child. So I like it. I think that I like the original version better, where there was a prize associated with each and every one. To me, this doesn't seem to be any different in terms of like, I love the strategy, but it doesn't seem to be too much different than some of the other game shows that are out there in terms of simplicity, because there really is not a lot to this. Roll the dice, take away the numbers, use your strategy to decide when you're going to let them go. Pray to God you get a couple of those insurance markers and rock and roll to a big prize.
No, I was going to say, I totally agree with all that, but to me that feels like the downside of it. There's not much to it. I do like the gameplay. The game is fun. But it's just there's too much luck, and the strategy twists that they do to it I like, but it doesn't feel like enough to make it a game show. It's a game I would like to play, but not a game show I want to watch. And I will say the home version is just the board game of Shut the Box. So unless you're like a collector of specifically branded games, if you want to play this at home, just combine Shut the Box and Trivial Pursuit, and it's the same thing.
Yeah, and if you want to play Price is Right, just go get a bunch of stuff and keep your receipt, and you can play Price is Right too.
Okay, I understand, but my point is that way you are emulating the game as opposed to the game is emulating an already existing game.
Well, I mean, in all honesty, there has been other games that have come from board games.
There have, and I love Scrabble. I love Scrabble. We talked about that. I'm not.
The funny thing is, but I don't like Scrabble the game, but I love Scrabble the game show because they're not the same.
Right. Well, they're not the same. That's very true.
But I don't like tic-tac-toe at all, but I love Hollywood Squares.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like it either, but for different reasons.
Well, and here's the thing: at the end of the day, you don't have to like the game show. But what I'm saying is that the reasons for you hating the game show, you should hate a lot of other game shows for them.
I take issue with you using the word hate, sir. I do not hate this show by any means.
I don't know. You're pretty strongly against it. I'm just
saying
you're going to rate it like a 2.
Oh no, not that low.
Really?
Yeah. Well, let's get into it. Let's get into it.
Right.
What do we rate them on? Dice?
Oh, dice, I guess. Right? Yeah, dice. Yeah. Okay.
This one, I'm going for a solid 2.5 with the thought of it is halfway, and I don't care that it sounds low because it feels kind of low, right? I like Shut the Box. I like playing the game. I don't like watching this show. It's just not interesting enough for me. The variance of just randomness is too much to make it really, I think, that compelling, and I think that is proven by how short it has run each time it has attempted to be a show.
I'm going to say that it was not necessarily the gameplay that caused this show to die, and I think that a lot of the shuffling had something to do with it too. But you don't shuffle something that's making millions of dollars, so if it was making more money, it may not have gotten shuffled to begin with. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So I'm not going to get on you for saying that this is a game that you'd like to play, but not that you'd like to see, because for me, I really enjoy Hollywood Squares, but I wouldn't want to be on that show. I'd want to be a celebrity on that show. So you know what I'm saying? Like,
Agreed.
I want to be in the square as opposed to playing the game.
Yes.
When it comes to this game, I just think it's fun, and it's silly, and the questions aren't real trivia questions. They're kind of almost Family Feudish in a way, which, by the way, side note here, play Guespionage on Jack TV. It's a Family Feud ripoff, and it's wonderful.
I love that game. It's great.
Love that game. Love it to death. So for me, I got to go higher than a 2.5. I'm going to give it 3 dice. I would like to give it even more than that. Wink Martindale's great. Alex Trebek is great. I
Alex
like the
Trebek hair is great.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I really want to go higher, but again, I kind of agree with you. There wasn't a huge run of it. So it isn't like one of those that, deserves that 3.5 in my brain that's been around forever, that sort of thing. So I'll stick with 3. I knew it was going to be higher than you from just your depression that you came on the broadcast with this morning.
I think I want to summarize it as this show is a glass of flat Sprite. It's not as bad as flat Coke, but I'm still not really interested in drinking it.
Yeah. And there's too much sugar in it regardless, either way.
Well, there you go.
Ugh, blah. All right, well, that's all the time we've got for today, Michael.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Christian. Thank you, Buzzerblog. Thank you, people who write in. And please keep them Stump the Chump questions coming.
Yeah, baby. All right, tune in again next time when we'll bring you the latest and greatest in the world of game shows, as well as a brand new featured show, too.
And remember, you can catch us online, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and, of course, tellthemwhatthey've.com.
Please subscribe, share, like, and drop a review if you like what you heard.
And if you didn't like it, I hope you roll an 11, and the only number left is 3.
That sounds right to me.
I mean, yeah, it works. Figure it out.
You're crapping out either way.
Yeah, exactly.
Have a great week, Mike.
Bye, Tom.
You've been listening to America's favorite game show podcast, Tell Them What They've Won, a JTech audio production, copyright 2020. No part of this podcast may be reproduced by anyone without the express written consent of the creators. For more information or to contact us, please go to tellthemwhatthey'vewon.com.
Alrighty, Tom, what'd you learn this week?
So, Mike, I really feel like the prizes just aren't as good anymore. And I've learned that I really like the prizes that they gave away back in the day. I know we talked about how it's now cash equivalents, and that makes a lot more sense and everything, but I just remember all those prizes as kids and being like, whoa! And, them having welcoming prizes in this show. I just like all these things. I was like, they just don't do that anymore. It's now, here's your cash, have a nice day.
Yeah. Well, and as I've gotten older, I followed that same change. As a kid, the prizes were awesome, but nowadays I'd much rather get money on a game show than a prize.
Yeah, at the end of the day, my wife would not want me bringing home any prizes, just cash.
Well, I mean, I'll say this. No matter what game show you go on, they're not going to be giving away rare Dungeon Synth cassettes as the prize. So that's what I would do with my cash. So
let me tell you what, Mike, that not until I have my own game show, and then I will be giving those away.
Fantastic.
Excellent. All right, what did you learn?
I learned, thanks to a question on this show, that Clarabelle, the clown from Howdy Doody, and Captain Kangaroo are the same person.
Get out of town.
Yeah, Bob Keeshan is his name. I always knew it was just from trivia that was the real name of Captain Kangaroo.
Right.
But he's also Clarabelle from Howdy Doody.
I didn't know either.
Yeah. Well, I mean, not that I know anything about either of these shows, of course, because I'm too young, if you'll remember.
Copyright 2020, a JTech audio production.